So everyone, welcome. Everyone on Facebook or in the future, after our live stream, we're going to have this on YouTube and on our Rainbow Pride website, but welcome everyone who's joining us. I tend to talk a little slow at the beginning of our chats just so people can have time to see that we're on Facebook talking, because it'll give them notifications. But welcome to our Spill the Tea Trans Talk. I'm super excited about this conversation today. Because I'm totally in love with the three people that we have chatting with us. So for those of you at home, who we have with us today is we have Natasha Stone, and Natasha works at Fairness, West Virginia, and Natasha is the transgender visibility organizer. And Natasha is just kind of an all-around rock star in my mind. And I won't talk about your Facebook status updates, but I'm a huge fan. And then we also have with us Avery Rose, and Avery is our 2019 Mr. Rainbow Pride of West Virginia King. And little fun fact, I say fun fact. Now remember, this is a spill the tea, so we're all friends here, just chatting, you know, enjoying each other's company, talking about the real life stuff. But, and I'll let Avery talk about this later, but Avery just recently went through top surgery. So that's, yeah, exactly. And then I'd also like to introduce Akasha Carmichael. And Akasha is a former Miss Rainbow Pride of West Virginia. And she hosts The Undeniable Truth, which is her own, would you call it a podcast or a Facebook?
Well, you know, it's kind of, you know, going in between the other two. So yeah. Yep. And it's on YouTube. So yeah.
And Akasha is also going to be hosting a new program that we're launching, a new series with Rainbow Pride. It's called Wig Out with Akasha, which is a series of similar to open stage drag performances that we'll be doing at different locations throughout the year. So that's pretty exciting for us, especially when it comes to our drag community. Since, you know, let's face it, our venues for and outlets for drag performances, especially up and coming queens and whatnot, are you know, we still have some very reliable venues, you know, whether it's the Stonewall, vice versa, and, you know, now the Lee Street Lounge in Charleston, and I know there's some other places, but it's just we think a good outlet to give the drag community some visibility. I love Akasha's already got her glass. She already.
Always have a glass of something. I don't got glass.
So even as we're chatting today, and I mentioned, and I say Natasha's a rock star, but true. Natasha, and I'll be honest with you, Natasha, and I haven't even said this to you before, but we will have discussions, like even at our Pride meetings, like when we have our Pride board meetings, and we're talking about health resources, and we're talking about transgender visibility and so many things that, as we, you know, given that we're an all volunteer organization, is we're trying to navigate, and we're always discussing like the impact you are having through Fairness West Virginia, you know, because you travel around the state, you know, well, actually, I'll just let you talk about what you do specifically.
Okay, so it sounds like you're talking about our Trans Health Guide. And so what that is, for anyone who doesn't know, Fairness West Virginia, a big part of my job is I go around the state and I work with healthcare providers, mental health professionals. So that is, you know, your doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, you know, anyone in a medical setting. That includes registration staff and, you know, even facilities management. We go in and we give them, we train them on how to provide competent and compassionate care to LGBTQ people. And we primarily focus, like we give a very specific focus to transgender patients, because we know that in general, and we've gotten really good reception from this from a lot of doctors and clinics, that they want to do right. They just don't really know how. They don't really know what best practices are. So like, that's what we do. We go in and we train them on best practices, how to, you know, like what are trans women, what are trans men, like what does it mean to be non-binary, and we'll give them, you know, like a big list of things that they can do to make, you know, trans people's lives easier within their visit to any sort of medical facility. And also what we do is we take those people who have gone through our training and want to be listed, and we've made a kind of a living guide on our website where, you know, we have listed for, you know, throughout the entire state, like, these are medical providers that, like, we have trained, and we are confident that you will go and you will have a good experience with this provider. And if there are certain, like, we have psychologists, like, this is who you can go to get your letter for gender dysphoria assessment. And, like, this doctor will prescribe, you know, HRT for trans women. This doctor will prescribe testosterone, and so on and so forth. So it's a big undertaking. We're actually a small staff. We only have 4 people on staff, and the majority of the work with the guide is actually only 2 of us. So it is kind of a long process, but you know, every month we make it a little bit more expansive, and, you know, we're out there talking to more people, and just every month it gets better. So
yeah, I mean, that is quite an undertaking, even as you're saying that, you know, because you guys do have a small staff, mm-hmm. and then 2 of you are primarily, you know, traveling around the state, because you've covered already. Well, I shouldn't say covered, but and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but Charleston, some of the Huntington area, and I want to say Clarksburg.
We've done some places in Clarksburg. There's definitely some doctors that we already knew were good, and we're trying to get them. There's some doctors in Morgantown. There's one psychologist in Morgantown we already have added that we know is good, and we're trying to get some of the other people in Morgantown added. Hopefully they'll be added in the near future. But yeah, no, we've. It's a massive undertaking, and usually how it works is, you know, we'll have certain clinics for, like, hey, we'd love to have you come train us, but then, you know, we also we do trainings for, like, we did a training for the West Virginia Psychological Association, had a fall conference this previous year, and I went in and gave all of them, you know, like 40 some psychologists all at once the training, you know, so it takes different forms. So sometimes it's going into a clinic and training the whole clinic. Sometimes it's doing, you know, kind of small Zoom webinars, and sometimes it's like doing conference stuff. But yeah.
That is amazing. Well, and I tell you, as folks, you know, occasionally reach out to Rainbow Pride asking for resources, you know, who the physicians are. And mm-hmm. there are 2 places that I usually refer folks, because, you know, we in-house don't have a comprehensive listing, because, you know, that, like you're saying, that's tough to get. Mm-hmm. But I always refer to your website, to Fairness West Virginia's website, and also to Dr. Rainbow, because that's a good jumping off point too.
Yes. And I want to be very clear, I would not call our guide comprehensive yet. We do have, I think, the majority of services that we are aware of in West Virginia, like transition related, covered. So, like, we have at least 1 doctor present that does HRT for trans women, 1 doctor that prescribes T for trans men, and we have psychologists who do gender dysphoria assessments. To our knowledge, there are no physicians in West Virginia that specialize in gender reassignment surgery, like in the genitalia. And we don't think there are any actual, like, we know there are surgeons that will do, like, double mastectomies for trans men. Avery can talk more about that. But we aren't aware of any doctors that their specialty is doing it for transgender men, and we don't know of any doctors that do any, like, facial feminization surgery for and that's their specialty.
Right.
So we do have the majority of the care that you can find in West Virginia from specialists who are do it specifically for trans people. But there are plenty of doctors out there that probably do these things, and we just haven't found them yet. So if any of those doctors are watching this, feel free to reach out to us at Fairness West Virginia. We'd love to get you on the guide. We'd love to get you, like, in with the training for your staff. You know, that's how this guide gets bigger and how it grows.
Yeah. And, you know, that's all, I think that's important, because so many conversations, and I think, you know, Akasha and I've had Akasha, sorry folks out there, between the Natasha and the Akasha or Akasha, But Akasha and I have had conversations in the past about medical resources for trans folks. That sometimes, and this is also why, you know, fairness is, you know, trans health, you know, guide, and that it is like an active, you know, resource that it for so long was so tough to find, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or tough to find people, physicians, and the right resources.
And we still get people that email us like, hey, you know, I just started transitioning. How do I change my name? How do I do all this stuff? So it's like really nice for us because we have like, here, where do you live? Here's a guide. And like, there's this doctor and this doctor right near where you live. And then they'll ask questions about legal name changes, gender changes, and all of that. So, you know, this is all relatively new. We didn't have all of this when I came on. Yeah. So it was, we would just answer that question directly via that email. Now we have like a resource hub where we can send them and be like, here's the answer to most of your questions. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out. But, you know, these are the basics. So.
Well, and I know that there's some social media groups that I think both Avery and Akasha are part of. And I think those resources would be good to share in there too, you know, with folks. Just, yeah. Well, this conversation is all about you guys and me learning and our community learning. And I think that part of our goal with our Spill the Tea chats and even all the online talks that we're doing is really to encourage people to talk to each other and to learn more about each other, to understand each other more. And so one of the things that I know I'd mentioned to you all earlier, but coming out trans. I mean, you know, as a cisgender, you know, gay male, I know what my coming out, you know, even though we all have our own path, you know, but what did it look like for you guys? For you folks, what did it look like?
I actually lost my wife of 5 years. She left me 2 months after I told her.
Wow. So how was that process of how did your realization about the truth of who you are, how did you accept that or get to that? Does that make sense?
It basically, what happened was right after she left, I was depressed. I did suicidal, I OD'd, everything. I had all of those emotions. But by the end of the day, and after a few weeks, few months, it pushed me to do more in my transition. Yeah. Like, I was less scared to go through with it. And that's when I started drag to help me out. And then I started looking into stuff. I talked to Fairness West Virginia. I talked to many of the Rainbow Pride and other individuals online. They have groups online where you can go and talk to them. And I actually got my complete transition done within a year.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's good. I mean, that's like, you know, it's a really fast transition.
That is.
Yeah, it really is. I have individuals contacting me like, how did you do this? Where did you go? And I mean, pretty much I talked to Wellness West Virginia and I talked to the trans guys online, and all the information that everybody has gave me made it a whole lot easier. I knew where to go. Yeah. And who to contact. Also working in the CAMC facility, I knew what physician was the best for my top surgery, and was recommended Dr. Hayes there in Charleston on Brooks Avenue or something like that. Everybody at CAMC told me you need to go to him.
Right.
So, and he did a pretty good job.
Well, that's good. I saw your reveal video. Was that a pretty emotional thing for you to do that very first reveal of since you had your top surgery?
Yeah, I was in shock once it happened. At first I was like, okay, everybody's got to see this. They got to see what goes on. They got to see all the emotions.
Sure.
And I didn't think it was going to be in shock. I thought I was going to just cry. But when she took off the bandage and I saw it, I was like in shock mode. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then like I think about 5 minutes after she stopped the video, I just bawled out crying.
Yeah.
And I can't stop touching.
I also have that problem, but the other way. I will say that I came out 8 years ago, so I'm kind of like, I don't want to say I'm a veteran, but I've been in West Virginia the majority of that time. I spent a small amount of time in DC. So I've actually been able to see kind of the changing perspectives of people in the state, from, being an out trans woman for almost a decade now. And I will say that I'm not finished with my transition, like as far as what I want. I actually have I had my consultation for SRS about a month ago, and I'll be getting it sometime next year. So hopefully after that, I can be like, okay, now we're good to go. But the process, I will say the process for SRS, like for trans women at least, I cannot speak to the experience for trans men. I assume bottom surgery for trans men is also very involved, but the process for trans women is actually a very long, kind of complicated, honestly, it's an ordeal. Like there's no other way of saying it. I've been out for 8 years, and my surgeon is still like, who doesn't live in West Virginia, who lives in New York City, because, that's one of the closest there's one surgeon in Pennsylvania, then there's a few in New York City, but like that's where you go if you're a trans woman, if you don't go out of the country or to California. And, they're like, we still need to see 3 letters from 3 separate physicians or psychologists. So like, it's a process, and I kind of ran out of steam. So if someone wants to jump in here, that'd be great.
I'm hanging on every word.
I am not that interesting tonight. Don't you do that to me.
I always think you're interesting. And at first when you said SRS, is that sexual reassignment surgery? Yeah,
and so there's actually kind of 3 different ways to say basically the same thing. SRS is sexual reassignment surgery, GRS is genital reconfiguration surgery or gender reassignment surgery, and then there's GAS, which is gender affirmation surgery.
Wow.
They all describe kind of the same thing, and it seems to be kind of just like a sort of generational divide about which one you use.
Right.
I've learned like older people or people who've been out for longer will still call it SRS, and then like younger people or people who've just started tend to say GRS or GAS. But they all mean the same thing. That would be, like a vaginoplasty for trans women, a phalloplasty for trans men, or a double mastectomy would also qualify as one of those things as well.
Right.
Sorry, I realize I am the technical assistance for this call.
And I really didn't plan on it being like that.
That's okay. I've been doing this for 8 years. I've studied it. I really do know my stuff when it comes to this. So feel free to lean on me for all of the acronyms.
Well, Akasha, how is your coming out story? I mean, I know part of it because you and I've chatted over the years, and you being brought up in the drag community and then transitioning even from, drag performer to being, the trans woman that you.
It's different because like, as you see, a lot of the other people here, as like Natasha and Avery, of course, they have had some surgeries done and things of that nature. And it's just different for me because sometimes it feels like I'm not validated. And within the community, it seems like some of the community feels like they have a gold star, and then the rest of us that isn't transitioned. It kind of makes us feel, so sometimes like as happy as I am for everybody that's had their opportunity I've had chances and opportunities. There's just different things that I'm struggling with, you know, when it comes with the trans gendered woman. Of course, you know, I have a lot of entertainers and a lot of sisters who have passed away. A lot of that mentally has, I think, has to do with how heavy they have become up at their top surgery, and which scares me. And you know, so you know, it puts not a damper, but it puts a lot of my dreams and wishes on the back burner because I'm cautious. I have asthma. I can't have a lot of weight on my chest as it is, but I still want to feel like I belong and like I'm a part of the trans community. You know, I live, eat, and breathe and fight for the trans community each and every day. But then, like I said, there's always that feeling that I'm not as good because I don't have my ghost star, you know, and it's a struggle. You know, I still have people, you know, that don't acknowledge me. And even in my own community, I have a lot of gay people who still don't acknowledge me. It's not that they disrespect me. I guess it's that they don't. It's like people always assume that they don't know, and it's like, how many times do I have to scream it from the rooftops? How many times do I have to say this? How many times? And just because I don't have this, and just because I don't have that, doesn't mean that I'm not who I say I am. So it's my transition, you know, and it's not a gloomy rain on your parade type of thing. It's just, it's always being included. And like I said, that's the fight that I've always been fighting. I'm fighting to be included in the Black community. I'm fighting to be included in the Black trans community. I'm fighting to be included in the trans community. And it's just, like I said, there's a lot of girls out there and guys that are out there that are like me, that are struggling with what we want to get done and how we're going to go about doing it. But when you have a lot of other people in the community that don't show us that support, it's not that it kind of feels like they're looking down at you at times, you know, not saying everybody, but it's just the feeling that you get. So it's been a try. It's been a, you know, it's been a little trial. But hey, I'm a trooper. I keep pushing on. You know, I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy within myself. I'm happy how far I've come. I've come a long way in my transition, and you know, I'm still fighting. So, you know, who knows? You know, here for long, I might, you know, make that decision, you know, to go ahead and get my top surgery done. But it's still, there was a episode on Pose that I was explaining to one of my friends about the other day, and I was like, you know, I've had that same. I don't know if you've all watched that episode when she actually was meeting her sugar daddy or whatnot, and she was so excited because she had got her transition done, and then after she got her transition done, she wasn't accepted, and he didn't want to be with her. And so, you know, those are things that play off in my head too, you know, like there's a lot of those things. And so if I think that way, does that mean that I'm not trans, or that I'm not as trans as the next trans girl, because I don't want these things like that to happen to me? You know what I mean? So it's just, it's all of those things that I think about, that I worry about, and you know, that just plays a role in my life day in and day out.
Yeah.
If I could also kind of add on to that, because Kasha's 100% correct. I would like to clarify, I've actually not had any surgical interventions yet, but I will be. I was very blessed and very lucky in my breast development on hormones that they were a good size, so I didn't need to get a breast augmentation. I haven't ruled it out yet, but I got very lucky in that regard. But I do want to talk about like this kind of trans enough thing that Akasha was talking about, because it's absolutely prevalent in the community.
Yeah.
And also outside the community. You know, if you're on like transgender Facebook groups or social media, or like on Twitter, there's just an absolute debacle going on in my kitchen, if you heard that. But
Okay.
but I have roommates. Sorry to say, no, I'm kidding. They're great. But you know, there is definitely kind of, it gets real cliquey sometimes between like the trans girls and the trans guys, that like, transitioned, quote unquote, I don't want to say transitioned well, but like transitioned to a more kind of like cisgender passing kind of way. So they pass as the gender, you know, they don't appear to people, like people won't look at them and go, oh, you look like you're a trans woman, or you look like you're a trans man. So just someone they look at and you're like, oh, I would assume you're cisgender. And kind of in the community that's called fish, especially for trans women. Akash, you probably know about all of that. And you know, it's real. And you know, if you do not have, like, you know, if you don't look feminine enough, you know, then you're ostracized from inside the community sometimes. And then even you know, certain surgeries, like, you know, certain trans women don't want to have SRS. You know, they are fine with their genitalia. They're fine with having a penis. That's not a problem for them. And so they elect not to get surgery. And that's completely valid. You know, they're no less trans than someone who does get surgery. You know, if you don't get on hormones, you're no less trans than someone else who did, quote unquote, all of the stuff. But in the community, and especially with people who like trans people, so like this is kind of going out into straight men, bisexual men occasionally, the people who love trans women, and again, I can only speak to being a trans woman and a white trans woman, so I can't talk too much about being like a trans man in this regard. But you know, some guys who like trans women don't want you to get surgery. So when you get surgery, you're no longer, you know, you're not the thing that they want anymore. And so they're like, oh, I'm not interested in that anymore. You know, I'm not interested in you if you have a vagina, you know. So there is a lot that goes on. And I just kind of wanted to speak to what Akasha was saying, and that is a thing that I think a lot of trans women really do think about, because we are, you know, a lot of us want to be loved for who we are, and a lot of us want, you know, someone to love us. Right. So I know that I've personally weighed, like, you know, if I get SRS, you know, like, am I ruining my chances of dating men, for instance, you know, because are they going to be like, well, you're trans, but you don't, you know, but you got surgery, and why would I date you now? So that is a very real fear, and I think a lot of trans women do struggle with that. So
because it's kind of sad, because it's like, you know, trans is included in the gay community, in the LGBTQ community, but then in the LGBTQ plus community, trans is also looked down upon. And that's a sad thing. It's because it's like there's so many times where you have your own community looking at you in disgust. And that's sad. We have enough people out here that is looking at us in disgust than for our own community. And like you say, that's a big thing to think about, because a lot of gay men don't want to date a transgendered woman. Right. And it's hard. It's hard to make that decision. Like I said, I struggle with the fact that I don't want to be considered, and I don't want anybody to take this in a wrong way or think that I don't want to be considered a woman. I want to be considered a trans woman, because I am different. I'm not her. I wasn't born like her. I was born like me, and I transitioned into who I am. So I'm a special kind of woman. Like my grandma always used to tell you, you special, grandbaby, you special. I sure am. I'm not like you. I'm like me. And I know I'm not a real woman, and I've never said that I was. I'm a transgendered Black woman, and I take that title with pride, and I walk with my head held high each and every day with that. So it's like there's so many times where it's like you're fighting, and you're fighting with that struggle too. Like so many people think, well, you're trying to be a real woman. No. They can have that. They can have that. I ain't mad at them for it. You go right ahead. You can have all of that and everything that comes with it. I'm perfectly fine with being this beautiful Black, transgender Black woman that I am. You know, why can't there be trans women and regular cis women? You know what I mean?
Well, you know, you're right. And this may sound naive coming from me, or maybe oversimplified, but you are a real woman. You're a trans woman. But that doesn't make you any less a woman. In my
and this is why she's my favorite drag for years and years.
And I I agree with you, Chris. I definitely think the community also is part of the problem in this regard. This one's kind of less of the trans community and more of just the LGB, kind of the cisgender community, where, I've definitely been told by cisgender people in the community, it's like, oh, we know you're just confused, you're just gay, you're just a gay man, and, like, you're going to figure that out and you're going to regret all of this. And it's been 8 years and I don't regret any of this. I think I'm adorable. But thank you. There's a lot of just kind of these misconceptions, and it's just the kind of the LGB community really does help perpetuate those things. And I've had friends who, like, I'm very wary about dating men. I am a bisexual trans woman, so I am attracted to men, but I tend not to date cisgender men just because, and if I didn't talk about this right now, I would be a terrible organizer for an LGBTQ civil rights organization. But I do want to mention that, this Pride Month in 2020, there have been at least 3 trans women that I am aware of.
Yes.
2 Black, 1 who I believe is Latina, who were murdered in the past week. I want to say Rhea Milton, Dominique Fells, and Selena Reyes Hernandez were all 3 murdered in the past couple weeks by, I believe in all 3 cases, by straight men who were either dating them or interested in them. And I can't tell you how many times I've tried to have this conversation of like, hey, if you're a man and you're attracted to trans women, you're still straight, like, unless you also like, cisgender men or trans men, and then in which case you're bi. But this idea that like, if you're a straight guy, you can't like trans women, or if you like trans women, you're some sort of other sexuality. That's not necessarily true. But straight guys will be attracted to trans women. I have straight guys that are attracted to me. And, trans people, trans women especially, and especially trans women of color, and especially Black transgender women have to, every day when talking with men who are interested in them, weigh this, like, they're attracted to me. Do they know I'm trans, first of all? And second of all, if they find that out, are they going to hurt me?
Yeah.
Yes, that there.
Yes, and I can't tell you how many times I've tried to speak on this, and I've had people in the community, not trans people, right, but LGBT, cisgender, lesbian, gay, and bisexual people say, well, like, we'll talk about like, oh, this woman was trans and she was dating this guy, and we all know that guy knew she was trans. Like, you don't date someone for 3 months and then get surprised that they're trans. Like, trans women don't really do that. They don't date you and sleep with you for 3 months and then all of a sudden go, hey, I'm trans. Like, that doesn't happen. None of us want to get murdered, so we're not going to do that. Right. But then they'll get, and then they'll be murdered by their partner, who finally, like, maybe his friends found out or something, and he just kind of felt, he felt, like, emasculated, or like he felt like his sexuality was in question, and like, and you can talk about how masculinity plays into that. But then he, like, he murders or assaults the woman, and then people in our own community are like, well, why didn't she tell him? And it's like, that's not, you don't murder people. Like, right. First of all, you just don't murder people. Like, I don't think that's a controversial statement, but it's like, we need the community to be there for us in that regard. Like, when trans women, and again, I don't have that problem as much as a Black trans woman, for instance. A Black trans woman's got to deal with that on a much more, much, what I'm searching for, like, much more proximity to actual, like, I'm worried about potentially getting assaulted.
I get scared for it every day.
Yeah, I'm rarely worried about getting murdered. It's if I would enter, like, in a relationship, I might be like, that could happen. But, like, there are people that are killing Black trans women just because, they're living their life, and they're not hiding it, and they're being who they are. And our own community is like, well, could you maybe not do it that way? Like, that's how you get murdered, if you do it that way. So
I can go to the gas stations several times or go to the gas station, even like the other day I was at the gas station, and I I noticed them, a guy looking and seeing me, and I instantly in my head I thought to myself, okay, he automatically thinks I'm cute. So now this is the thing that I'm going to have to deal with. I'm going to have to get out of the car and walk into the gas station and get what I want to get without him trying to push up on me, because I know that that's exactly what's going to happen. So as soon as I get out of the car, they get out of the car. You know what I mean? And then they're right behind me. They didn't even go look for whatever the hell they had to go look for in the store. They had to come right behind me. And so so I'm like, buy my stuff and I leave and I go out the door. They girl, it was not even 2 seconds. Like, they didn't even really get anything. They just went into the store right behind me, talked like they was getting something, and then came right back out. And so it's like, and just watched me go to the thing. Another guy just pulled up in front of my doorstep one day. I'm sitting outside on my porch and just literally is like, hey, how are you? What are you doing? And this, that, other. I'm instantly scared because, I don't know you. And, if you look at me and assume that I'm something that you are attracted to or something like that, and then you realize that I'm something that I'm not to you, how is this going to play out? How are you going to talk to me? Like, and it's a scary thing. And then I've talked to my husband about things because I've had issues with him at times saying, um, that why do I have to wear a grandma muumuu outside just because it doesn't turn anybody on? It's less attractive. How come I can't wear a nice little pair of shorts or a nice pair of leggings or jeggings and without feeling like I've asked for it? You know what I mean? And that's the feeling that I get all the time. It's like, I didn't ask for it. I just want to be able to be pretty. If she likes to walk out and look pretty and wear her hair a certain kind of way, how come I can't walk out and be pretty without feeling like, well, you're just asking for it to be hurt. You're just asking for it because you're giving them the illusion and they believe that you're something that you're not. So if you get beat up or somebody does something harmful to you, then you're asking for it. And it's just, it stinks.
It
stinks.
And 100% that is how they phrase it. I want to, again, I don't want to push back again what you said, because that is actually how they view it and how they phrase it. But I do want to talk about like this idea that you're deceiving them. This is an it's
right.
Not, if you're attracted to women and you see a woman you're attracted to, that's fine. Now, if you're not attracted to women who have penises, that's also fine. No one is going to get mad at you for saying that you don't want to date a trans woman who hasn't had SRS. The vast majority of people will not get mad at you. The problem is once you realize, that woman that you're attracted to is transgender, if you want to be violent, again, that's the problem. And we've really got to, as a community, and again, the majority of LGBT cisgender people aren't actually turning violent themselves, but there is that kind of reinforcement of, well, why did you, like Akasha said, why did you wear short shorts when you went out? You know what kind of attention that brings. And it just feels like when you hear those things, it feels like kind of this specific thing against trans women that we usually throw up against women who have been sexually assaulted or raped by men. It's like, well, what are you wearing? Why would you do that? Why didn't you tell him? Why didn't you say you weren't interested? Those kinds of things. And again, the onus is not on trans women to disclose that they're trans. The moment a guy looks at them and go, whoa, 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 if you don't like girls who are trans, you need to walk away because, that's not, the onus is not on us to disclose immediately. The onus is not on us to make ourselves less attractive or hide ourselves from the world. The onus is on other people not to hurt us and not to murder us. And especially, again, I can't stress this enough, stop murdering Black trans women. The onus is on everyone else. It is not on trans women and Black trans women to hide themselves. The onus is not on us to be quiet. That's all I got. I'm sorry, I ran out of steam again.
No, I mean, it's like, obviously, as we all know, these deeper societal problems of, first of all, why, if we're realizing that it's someone other than we thought we were, if I'm attracted to women and look at Akasha, she's a beautiful woman, but then I find out Akasha's a beautiful trans woman, what predisposes that person to resort to violence against that person? Like, how, I mean, where's, and
Because they feel it automatically.
right,
If you're attracted to a trans woman, you're gay.
right,
If you see me from afar and you think that I'm beautiful, if you
right,
see me up close and you think I'm beautiful, if you see me walking down the street and you're like, damn, she's sexy, she got a nice walk or whatever, if you see all of that and then realize that I'm transgender, then you automatically assume that you're gay and that I did something like I try to pull a trick or treat or a tomfoolery.
right.
I didn't try to do that. And I was looking, at Avery, and this is nothing against Avery or trans men, but it's just sometimes it feels like it's like a double standard that we have in the community for transgendered women, especially transgendered women of color, because transgender white women, no tea, no shade, y'all get by with a lot of stuff. And transgender women of color, we get looked at like, okay, whatever. We're more sexual. We're more sexual beings and stuff like that. That's how people portray. Yes, I might like the sex. Who knows? But still, yeah. Like, why are we portrayed that way more than anybody else? Why is it that transgender men, get the pass amongst the straight cis community? You know what I mean? A lot more. I'm not saying all the time, but a lot more than the transgendered woman would get. You know what I mean?
She's 100% correct. Like, trans women and trans women of color definitely have it worse than any trans men. It's ridiculous how it goes. Like you're always seeing a trans woman of color getting murdered. But do you see the trans men getting murdered? Right. The only issue with being a trans man is little compared to a trans woman or a trans woman of color.
Right.
With trans men, we get, it's like they're mesmerized by us or something like that. Like, you will get a lesbian that will be completely on board, know that you are trans, you are going through the process, and they're 100% fine with it. But then a few months into you transitioning or whatever, it's like a downfall. They're like, oh, I can't do this. And they've known from day one that this is what was going to happen. But they were interested in the image in their mind, not what was really going to happen. And I have faced that like a lot. I've had lesbians be into me 100% and then like totally downfall and be like, yeah, no, I don't think so. I'm a lesbian. And I was like, dude, that's why I told you that I'm trans. Like, it's going to happen. The surgery's going to happen. I told you I was trans. What did you think was the outcome going to be? So we have it a whole lot easier than any trans women, especially trans women of color. We have it way easier.
Well, and I see a lot of, and I'm probably going to pick the wrong word. I'm a photographer, not an English major.
Don't worry, I'll roast you when you mess up. Don't worry. I'm kidding, I won't.
But, and I realize, before I say this, I realize that, trans women have been fetishized, but there's this new trend of fetishizing trans men. Seeing all these, like, whether it's websites, like porn, and where there are straight men or cisgender men, regardless of what their sexual orientation is, fascinated and obsessed with that, masculinity, but and how many times do we have a conversation or have I been out somewhere with, my cisgendered friends, gay friends, and even straight friends, and it's like, or if you see a lesbian that is rather masculine, or you see a trans man, like, what a cute boy. What a cute boy.
But you see, most of the guys like a cisgendered man will find it such a, like, some of them, like, because I've seen some of those. I've seen, and I've just been like, like, that's such a turn on to them to think that that they can still turn a lesbian, because a transgendered man to a cis man is always in their mind a lesbian.
Right.
That's what they look, and that's nothing taken away from Avery or any other any other transgendered men. But in the cisgendered man's mind, that's exactly what's going through their mind, is that's still a trans one. That's a lesbian. And so if I can, that's their fantasy. If they can turn a lesbian, then that's, that's another notch on their belt. So, it's like, like when it comes to, the trans man, come on, grab a beer, let's go drink, let's go do this, let's go do that. But as soon as a transgendered woman comes up in the room, because I've been around a bunch of straight people that's been, and there can be lesbians and transgendered men or men that are identifying that way, but as soon as a trans woman comes up, it's a problem. Why she got to be like that? Why, or he, that's how they would refer it. Why they got to be like that? But don't say nothing to, the lesbian that's over here that looks like a straight guy, which I'm proud for her. And even if she don't want to be called a transgender man, she still looks more like a man than any other men that are here playing euchre. But you know what I'm saying? But she's okay to be in the area. She's okay to be at the campfire. But the transgender woman, as soon as she walks through, it's an issue. It's always going to be that issue. And it's like, we can't get through the issue through the straight community. Then we got the gay community that's not letting us get through the issue as well, because they're looking at us like, like we're a problem or something. And it's just like you can't even date your own kind, as if you want to say, because like that's you're attracted to what you're attracted to. I get it, but at the end of the day, it's just like there's such a big negative stigmata on transgendered women. And it stinks, and it's a lot. We have to get better in, like I say about the Black community. You know how I get on the Black community all the time. We have to be better as a gay community with the transgender community, and open up and start befriending them, start talking to them, start learning to them, go out and eat with them, have a drink with them. You know what I mean? If you're not comfortable, get comfortable, because at the end of the day, it stinks that, like sometimes, honestly, like when I go places with you guys, or like if you guys would invite me to some place, I feel honored, because like a lot of people don't invite a lot of transgendered women to go to places and eat or go and hang out or come to functions, because they don't want to be seen with us, and unless you pass, like, and no tea, no shade against other people. Thank Jesus, I pass on so many other kind of levels. But let me tell you, I know some of the girls that I've been out with at times when we've left the bar and we've went places, and I've been that girl on the other side where the pretty girl was over here and the okay girl was over here, and they're looking at her and giving her compliments, but making you feel so utterly uncomfortable and not welcome. You know what I mean? So it's like we have to get better with our own community. And I've been preaching it. I'm not going to stop preaching it. Everything that I preach comes to permission, however you will say it. Everything that I say, comes true. I keep it 100. But like I said, we have to come with our own community first. We can talk about what we want to do all day long, but until we nip it in the bud with our own community, come together, kumbaya ourselves together, we're never going to get that work out. We're never going to get worked out.
And even speaking to all that, even on the sometimes the smallest gesture means a lot, and it really kind of floored me once, because this was a really small gesture. One of those types of things. I wore to two events. I wore a trans pride t-shirt, and it was a pink t-shirt, and it says pride, and it was the baby blue and then the pink and the white, the three colors. And every single trans person that saw me hugged me. I've never been hugged and thanked by so many trans people. And after the second or third time, I'm thinking, why aren't folks just seeing this small act of support anyway? Do you know what I mean? Like, why was just me wearing that t-shirt that meaningful? And
Well,
there's such a greater issue.
So, well, I'll take a crack at this. I think, okay, so I think a lot, especially for trans women, and I don't want to, I don't want to take away the struggle that trans men have, because I think we have the opposite problems in a lot of respects. Trans men get erased a lot. When we talk about these kinds of conversations, we don't talk about trans men as much as we should. And on the other side of that, trans women, and again, this goes doubly true for trans women of color and Black trans women. Trans women are hyper visible. We are constantly being looked at. We are constantly in society's eye. I think, as like Akasha was saying earlier, I think the reason that Black trans women get it even worse is because as a society, and because of, kind of that embedded white supremacy that exists, for a lot of people, and kind of just in general, kind of how we view things, Black people and Black women, and so by that token, Black trans women as well are sexualized more so than white people are. And you can look through media, you can look through, like historical accounts, that's everywhere. So
for Pete's sake, that's how they used to discredit Black men, and they would literally rape Black men in front of their wives to demasculate Black men. You know what I mean? And they would rape Black women in front of their Black men. And sexualize it. It's all that Black people was ever used for is sex. And that's all we're good for is work and sex. And when it comes to being trans, yes, like I said, that's like 10 times. It's like 10 times more. And so it's like, it's hard to get through to them that, just because, like I said, we all like what we like, but that doesn't make me any less of an important person because I'm Black.
And yeah, and I mean, and as a trans woman, as a white trans woman, I am sexualized more than white women, like white cis women, so Black women are sexualized more than white women, so Black trans women are going to be more sexualized than all of those other groups. That's how that works. But like Akasha was saying, look at pornography. Black people in pornography, it's a fetish, and in trans women are also a fetish in pornography. Trans women are some of the most popular pornographic, actresses out there. So I think go back to the original question of like wearing that t-shirt. It's not uncommon for trans women especially, but also just trans people in general, to exist in a place where they're not sexualized. So like just the fact that you're like, hey, I know that this color of shirt means transgender, and I'm just like in that moment, trans people can look at that and go, like you're not saying, oh, I love trans women because they're the best of both worlds, or I love trans men because of this, that, or the other. You're just quietly, just this simple act of support that does not, and it's not something that trans people see enough of. And again, like most conversations involving the LGBT community, most conversations involving, the straight community, the cisgender heterosexual community, involve talking about trans people, and especially trans women, in a sexual way. Like it's always like, about, like, well, they're women with penises. If even if they're that nice about it, a lot of times they'll just say they're men parading as women, but like even, if they're going to be nice about it, they're like women with penises, right? If you're not trying to sleep with that person, the fact that they have a penis is completely irrelevant. Like
shouldn't matter.
Completely. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been not since I've been doing like this as a career, but like when I was in college and I was talking with people about my experiences as a trans woman, and like like you can ask all sorts. I can't tell you how many times I'd be like, so have you had surgery yet? what's in your pants? And I would always just be like, do you want to sleep with me? Like, are you asking me out right now? And they'd be like, no. And I'm like, well, then it doesn't matter. Like,
Right.
there
I have
is,
been facing that since I've started. What's in your pants?
yep. There is an obsession. And again, just because of the way that these kind of marginalizations and intersections kind of coalesce, it goes downhill. So like, white trans women get this, but then black trans women get it even worse because we sexualize black people more than we sexualize white people. It boils down to what's in your pants, what genitalia do you have, are you someone I could have sex with? Like that kind of is how it boils. That's what it boils down to for a lot of the time, especially with straight men and especially just with men in general, I think. And again, to go back to Akasha's point from way earlier, the problem kind of in society with respect to trans people is that on a base level, I think the majority of cisgender people, I'm not gonna say every cisgender person does this, but I think the majority of cisgender people, like on a fundamental base level, view trans women as men and trans men as women. And a lot of them, there are plenty of them who are allies who, well, I don't want to say allies, but plenty of them who like, I support trans people, you are who you say you are. But like on a fundamental base level, they can't kind of get that out of their head that penis is man and vagina is woman.
They're stuck on the genitalia. They're stuck
Yeah.
on the, yeah.
They
They're
can't get
stuck on the genitalia.
And again, completely irrelevant in like, I don't have sex with everyone I've ever met. I personally don't have that kind of time. So, jokes, sorry. But like, it doesn't matter what, like, if I'm just meeting someone and, like I meet someone down the street and we're just having a casual conversation about, like we work in the same office building. My genitalia is completely irrelevant to that conversation, but I think it's just kind of this fetishization and kind of this like spectacle that cisgender people have with trans people, where they're like, oh, you're an oddity, so I'm entitled to these kinds of things, like, and maybe they don't mean to do that. Maybe they're just trying to be friendly, or they're like legitimately curious. But a lot of the time it just comes out like, hey, you should tell me this because I'm being nice to you.
That's probably like some of the biggest issues that they have in the workforce, is because at the end of the day, it's like you're judging me based off of my genitalia, and I know this, and it's a fact that we can't prove it. It's just like how I try to tell people all the time: just because you say you're not racist don't mean I don't know a racist person when I see one. Just like when you tell me that I'm not getting picked or hired for such and such, it's based off of this, especially when I know I have the credentials to prove to back up everything I say, So I know that it's based off of this, I said that I went to an interview at a restaurant up here. And when I walked in, it was an interview for managers, and all the managers that are in the interview, I managed somewhere else. I was their boss somewhere else, and they were employees underneath me. They weren't managers; they were employees. But I looked at some of these people, and then when they received the job over me, it did make me feel that point right there. It's like they see me as a transgender woman, because I like to go places and present myself very well when I go to a certain, especially job interviews and things like that. I've had several jobs that that I've had since my transition, that were very lovely jobs. But it was just the fact that I put myself out there, and that was the first time that I felt it. I felt it. There's always times where, you can, it didn't, whatever, there's my black, whatever. But this time I felt it. And I was like, oh, no, you didn't, because I know I'm highly more qualified than all these people up in here. So, but you looked at the fact that I was transgendered, and it's that thing, like I said before in our talk that we had the last talk we had, Chris, about how they're always thinking they're looking out for our best interest. I hate that. I hate it. I can't stand it. Every time they say it, it makes me want to reach up there and just knock them upside the head. And I'm sorry, I promote violence. I'm Malcolm X's daughter, but but I hate that. You know what I mean? Like it's always said, and it just I can't. I just can't.
Natasha, I'm really happy, even for my own benefit, you verbalizing it and vocalizing what you just said. Because, you know, I find myself often just in my capacity with Rainbow Pride, when I'm in when I'm in places or in rooms having conversations about gay folk and trans folk, and I always talk about at one point or another that when we break down these barriers and people stop seeing us as what they think we do in the bedroom and start seeing us as human beings. But I also need to add to that conversation that trans people are more than what you think their genitalia should be or is, because that's, I mean, that's a for me in my mind. Again, I oversimplify things at times, but isn't that what it's about? You know, we're more than, as a gay man, I'm more than what I do, what someone may think I do behind closed doors. And trans people are so much more than the sum of the genitalia that they were born with, or, you know, or part of their transition.
Right. I mean, you're 100% right on that. Again, does a trans person's genitalia matter if you're like, oh, I want to ask this person out on a date, I'm, you know, like I'm attracted to them? Sure, then it might matter, right? I do these kinds of trainings like with doctors, and I always say the same thing. The only two types of people that should ask me about my genitalia are potential partners and medical professionals.
Sure.
Like, you know, those two groups of people, sure. You know, like, you know, if I'm going to my doctor and he needs to know what kind of genitalia I have, my doctor's a man, then yes, that's fine. But, you know, just some random person I meet, you know, like out at a party or whatever, they don't need to know. It's none of their business. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change our interaction, or it does, but it shouldn't. It changes it because to them, I'm a fundamentally different person now than the person I was before they realized I was trans.
Why does your transgenderness matter why does it matter your transgenderness if you're working at a hotel, or if you're checking somebody into a restaurant, if you're being a hostess, if you're, you know, taking travel, you know, arrangements or something like that? Why does it matter what we have above or below the belt? You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's like you're worried, like me being transgender has nothing to do with the fact that I can serve you a drink. You know what I mean? Like, or I can be a bartender. You know, why can't I be a bartender? Maybe I don't want to work at Hooters. But at the end of the day, like, why can't I be a bartender like her? Because the fact that, you know, I'm transgender and I'm not going to appeal to these guys, or I'm not going to, you know what I mean? It's like they're always so busy trying to say that they're worried about our best interests, like I said before. And it stinks, because it's like, me being transgender isn't going to keep me from placing books on the library shelf to become a librarian, or, you know, fixing a car if I'm an auto mechanic. It's not that what my genitalia, like you said, I'm more than what I am in the bedroom.
And Avery, have you experienced, like, work-wise, any sort of, you know,
Yeah.
facial expression at all?
Basically on an everyday basis.
Really?
Yeah, everyday basis. Even binding. My chiropractor told me to stop binding because it was crushing my ribs. So I stopped binding for about a week, but that's when it was the worst, because they saw I was a triple D. So they saw that I had a chest. So they were automatically like, female. And I would even tell everybody, because I would only correct the people I work with, like the nurses, the doctors, and stuff like that. If it was some rando person from like room 203, I wouldn't care. But if I was working with them and they were calling me a she, I would correct them. And I have almost lost my job, I can't tell you how many times, just because I have corrected somebody I work with.
Yeah.
And I even went into them telling them that I was transgender, that I would have the surgeries, and I am to be called a male, not a female. I was like, and I will stress this the whole time I'm working. So if you don't agree with this, or this is going to be an issue for the facility, you don't need to hire me.
Avery, let me ask you a question. Did you feel that them taunting you put a rush on your surgery? Like, it made you feel like you had to get it sooner and to appease somebody? And I'm not saying that you was trying, but a sense of appeasement for them to get off your back. You know what I mean? Like you're working at this place and they're constantly saying these things and you're just like, oh my gosh, well, I gotta hurry. And in your mind, you're thinking, I gotta hurry up and get this done so they can quit talking about me, so they can leave me alone, so they can quit pressuring me and stuff. Did you feel that way at times?
I felt like that most of the time because in West Virginia, I'd rather have not got my top surgery. I would have rather been somewhere else that is better known for top surgery for trans men. But due to the simple fact that obviously I'm here, I'm getting misgenderized 24/7. I'd rather have the top surgery in West Virginia and try to stop getting misgenderized.
Okay, I want to just hop in real quick because Avery said it the best way. That's kind of how, I can't speak for every trans woman, I can't speak for every trans man, I can't speak for every non-binary, I can't speak for the trans community on this as a whole. But I can say in general, I love attention. I love it when a cute guy is looking at me or a cute girl is like, I enjoy attention. But at the end of the day, we just want to be left alone to live our lives, right? Like, and Avery was like, I got to do this so they'll leave me alone, right? Yeah. That is the heart of, and that actually is a thing that we didn't get a chance to really talk too much about tonight because I know we're almost out of time. But we didn't talk too much about how things like, there are certain things that certain trans people will do that they wouldn't do otherwise just because of society. Like, society's like, oh, well, you got to do this. Like, you got to get on hormone, you got to get this face surgery, you got to get that brow bone shaved, you got to get this jaw work done, or you got to get top surgery. And they might not wanted to have done that, but because they're like, well, I just want people to leave me alone and kind of treat me the way that they should be treating me without doing that.
Right.
I'm going to go.
Granted, with the bottom surgery, obviously, you can't see anything of that type. So right. I can totally wait for that until I can go out of West Virginia, which is great. Because I can just put a packer in my boxers and bam, right. You see the bulge. That's great. Because unless you're sleeping with me, you're not going to know the difference.
Right.
And if you're trying to sleep with me, my wife might kick your ass. So
I was going to say, I've met your wife.
There are
trans girls are looking at your breast and always constantly looking at your body and, checking your hips. And, there's things that have to always be on point when being a transgender woman. You always have to make sure that when you walk out every day, that you have to be on point with everything. Make sure your lashes are right, your hair is right, make sure your ears are right. Do you look like a woman? Are you feminine enough that when you get ready to walk into the grocery store that you look okay and that people aren't going to harass you? Or are you that type of girl that can go in and get, there's several times that and like I said, there's more times that has happened in a positive way than it has in a negative way for me. But, and I love that feeling, walking in place and they say ma'am or, miss or sweetheart or something like that. But it's always that one or two times where you get somebody that looks at you and they spot your difference. Mm-hmm. They spot your difference. And then before they spotted your difference, they treated you a certain kind of way. But as soon as they spot your difference, it completely changes from 0 to 60.
Yeah, I was being called a male when I went into this one doctor. And then as soon as she read my chart, need to say, my chart says I'm a male. And as soon as she seen my chart and what surgery I was going for, she switched it to ma'am. And I looked her dead straight in the face and I was like, I'm not a girl. And she was like, well, you're having a hysterectomy, so obviously you are a girl. And I was like, no. I am having a hysterectomy because it is a medical procedure that I have to do. I was like, that does not define if I'm a male or a female. And she's like, well, if you have a uterus, you're a female. And I said, so what happens when you have a woman that had cancer and had to get her uterus taken out? She's not a woman anymore? Because I'm pretty sure that's more of a woman than any woman would ever be. She lost what she wanted, her own, just because she had cancer. And you're going to sit there and say she's not a woman? Needless to say, that person got in trouble. CAMC got involved.
Yeah.
So
I do want to. First of all, it's amazing that they got in trouble because they should have. But I do want to talk about how, like, not even looking at like big surgeries, like just the way that people present themselves. Like, you know, Akasha, I'm sure, like you've already talked about it. A lot of trans women especially are pigeonholed into certain ways of expressing themselves. Like, I'm not going to shave my head. I don't want to invite that kind of attention, right? So there are definitely, I would love to maybe shave my head, right? I would love to see, you know, like I would love to shave the side of my head. Like that's a style that I think is great and I'd love to go for it. But, you know, I'm afraid that if I do that, then people are going to be like, well, so like there are just things that, like, you know, we can talk about how people are pressured into surgery, which absolutely happens, pressured to not get certain surgeries or get certain surgeries, but it's even on a more base level of expression. Like trans women and are pushed to be more feminine than perhaps some of them would like to be. Trans men are pushed to be more masculine than some of them would like to be. You know, trans women, some trans women want to wear, you know, jeans and a you know, a jean jacket or a leather jacket. Like they want to be butch and.
And
You know,
like half of these cis women out here, because half of these cis women, I have to teach how to walk in high heels. Half of these cis women, I have to teach how to put on makeup. Half of these cis women walk around here like burly ass men, you know what I mean? But then gonna look at us like you ain't real. Neither are you, because I mean, like, you know, like watching my grandmothers and watching, you know, the Gone with the Winds or the Breakfast at Tiffany's and all these other different things where I've emulated different black, not black women, but just different women, and just, you know, just watching different things, and just to look at the women, the cisgendered women community, they don't even act, you know, the part, you know what I mean? But to look at us, it's like, you know, we go all out, we go above and beyond, we do all the things that they don't do. You know, sometimes I'm like, why didn't they even look in the mirror before they walked out the door? Like, you know what I mean? But here we are, having to get up an hour earlier to make sure everything is good. Make sure you're being honest. Make sure your monkey's tucked. Make sure this and that is, you know, put away and your hair's not shown. So, you know, it's just a whole different package that transgendered women have to go through that people don't understand. It's a time-consuming, strenuous package that we go through.
Because people
trans people absolutely, sorry, Chris, trans people absolutely are held to a higher standard of femininity and masculinity than their cisgender counterparts. Just 100%. Like, you know, if I decided I wanted to wear jeans and like a denim jacket and just kind of like shave my head, people would go, are you not really a woman? If a cisgender woman did that, I would just be like, oh, okay, that's a fine thing that you can do. But like, you know, we're expected to wear dresses. Trans men are expected, you know, be masculine, grow facial hair, and, you know, trans people are just held to a higher standard of these gender roles, or else they're like, well, you're not really this gender that you say you are, because, you know,
you're playing.
Yes,
You're playing.
exactly. And I mean, that goes both ways. Again, don't really have enough time to get into all of that, so I'll talk about that next week.
Right. There's some really multi-layered conversations. You know, even with what you're saying right there, Natasha, for some reason, you're talking about gender roles. You guys released Fairness released a button, wasn't it last year? It said pepperoni rolls, not gender roles.
We sure did.
I mean, come on, you know. But, you know, that is such an injustice for trans folks, is because, you know, I see it too, where you're being held to a higher standard of femininity or masculinity, you know, because if you have to meet those standards, because otherwise, you know, looking at trans women, it's like, oh, now she looks like a guy. Or a trans man, oh, she looks like, or, you know, he looks like, or however they misgender, or, you know, using wrong pronouns, but, you know, saying that they, you know, a trans man looks like a woman, you know? I mean,
I'm just saying trans women look a whole lot better than most women, like cis women.
Yeah.
They just look better.
I say, you know, why can't trans women and trans men, and anybody, I guess, for that matter, but just be accepted for who they are, how they're presenting, and like you said several times, and it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter what your genitalia is, and I realize that, you know, just because I say it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But hopefully, though, that if we continue having conversations like this, and I know, Natasha, you guys are doing this at Fairness and have been doing this at Fairness. I mean, hopefully we're just encouraging people to have these conversations in their group of friends. You know what I mean? Because really, even this conversation, and I'm recognizing that we're kind of over an hour now, but there are so many things that, you know, you guys have talked about, or, you know, that we've talked about that, you know, even as a cisgendered man, you know, I'm being reflective upon, you know, like there are times that I'll have conversations with folks who are asking me like, oh, like when Caitlyn Jenner came out publicly, you know, Akasha, I see the look on your face. That's
Because you know how I feel about that. And I don't want to seem like I'm being mean to our community because of how I feel about that. And I just.
Someone asked me once, and he is someone who, you know, he's just not experienced. He's not met people other than who he is. And he's older.
Calling him he.
Well, because he is a he. Yeah, he. I'm trying not that he's going to see this, but I'm trying to be respectful and not call him out directly. But and he asked me, he's like, you know, do you think that, I'm not talking about Caitlyn as a he, I'm talking about this person talking to me.
I thought you were talking about Caitlyn.
No. And he said, do you think Caitlyn's just doing this for attention? And I'm like, well, would you do that for attention? And well, no, but you know, Caitlyn gets more money than I do. And doesn't that just mean that Caitlyn's gay? Or does that mean Caitlyn's a lesbian? I'm like, well, does it matter who Caitlyn is attracted to? And I said, honestly, and he kept associating being gay, sexual orientation, with a gender assignment at birth and gender identity. Like all of those three things was lumping them all together because that's what he understood. And I told him, I said, listen, I'm not a trans person. So to some degree, no, I don't understand the process that a trans person goes through because I can't. I haven't walked in their shoes. But what I can do is I can respect that person and I can treat them with decency. And he looked at me and he's like, okay, I can do that. And so I'm like happy that he was, you know, you know, he rested on this. And this was a conversation we had years ago, but it just rolls right back to, even though he didn't ask me the specifics and about the surgeries and all that sort of stuff, but it still comes down to the presenting with the femininity or what the genitalia is, or are they just doing it as a stunt? Like you were saying earlier, is it an act, you know?
But in Caitlyn's issue, I only thing I have to say is that when you use your platform to designate your platform to speak on behalf of a certain community, and then what you're speaking on doesn't coincide with the community that you're speaking on, I have an issue with that. And that's the problem that I have with Caitlyn.
And that's another Zoom talk altogether, right?
I was gonna say, yeah, Caitlyn Jenner, 100% woman, absolutely trans woman, you know, she, her, all that. Please shut up. Like, please, like, I didn't roll my eyes as hard as Akasha, but I feel the same way. Like, Caitlyn routinely speaks for the community in a way that isn't representative of the community. And that makes sense because trans people in general aren't rich. And so, you know, it's just that one kind of boils down to like, you know, hey, maybe you should use your platform to uplift, you know, other trans voices instead of your own, because you're it's not great. It's not great.
No.
It's not great.
No, you've noticed she's not spoken anywhere.
Yeah, but again, 100% a woman, 100% transgender woman, like, not taking her identity away from her.
No.
I wish she would maybe not speak so much about it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just because your identity doesn't control if you're an asshole or not.
It's true.
Just because you had the money to get the things done that we want to get done, doesn't mean that you are automatically an scholar on the subject. And that's the thing, is like, you know, when she transitioned, and like we said, we're glad, we're proud. When you transition, you had the money to do that, but all the things that you know, you automatically was put into the limelight as a spokesperson for the trans community, and you did not have the same beliefs that the trans community has. A lot of them, not just a smidgen of them, but a large portion of them. And so when it comes to her, I'm glad. Stay content with being a woman, honey, but leave everything else to the rest of us in the community, because you can use your platform for something else. Because you know, sorry.
Well, Natasha, before we wrap up, you have something coming up with Fairness, right?
Yes, Fairness West Virginia. We're this LGBTQ civil rights organization in the state of West Virginia. We're going to be hosting kind of more of a not a continuation, but kind of a more specialized version of what we were talking about here. We're going to talk about, we did touch upon it in this conversation a lot more than I thought. Like, I wasn't sure exactly what we would talk about, but we did touch upon it a fair bit here. We're going to talk more about kind of how the LGB community, the things that they kind of get wrong about the trans community, like not all of them, but some of them, and just kind of the stereotypes, and just, we're going to have some trans people on, and they're going to talk about their experiences, and kind of, because this is kind of for everybody, you know, and straight people and cis people can watch, straight cis people can watch this, but this is kind of more oriented towards like our LGB brothers and sisters, our cisgender brothers and sisters, on like kind of what, you know, maybe what to do and what not to do when you have a trans friend, kind of.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. Yeah. We're going to talk. So honestly, it's going to be a continuation of this talk, because we did talk about that heavily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's needed. I mean, it's, the more we talk about it.
It's time to educate. It's time, like you guys, like they're talking about the Black House with the Black Lives Matter. It's the same thing, you know. It's time to educate. It's time to educate our own community. You know, with the Black Lives Matter community, we're trying to educate. You know, Black trans women are trying to educate our own community, because in our own community we have it 10 times worse in our own community. You know, like, we're fighting against our own people. And so, you know, it's time to educate these people. And I love what you guys with Fairness is doing. It's, you know, educating people and letting them know, you know, what's going on, how to talk to us, how to approach us, that we're just like you, that, you know, you know, all those things that, you know, we're the same, but we are different. You know what I mean?
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And what we kind of, the thing that, like, you know, I get paid to do this. This is my job, you know, and a lot of people, you know, it's like, you know, Chris, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but Rainbow Pride is mostly volunteer. So like everyone on the board, you know, you all have different jobs, right, that you do. This is actually my job, is to help educate the community. So I think, you know, a lot of the time what we do as a community, and this is true in other communities as well, is that we, you know, we ask for education from people who are not, you know, that we're not, you know, like, we're not compensating them. We're not, you know, we're not appropriately, like, repaying them for their education. And that usually means it's Black women, Black LGBT women, and Black trans women that are doing that educating. So as much as possible, we want to be able to educate people in a way, it's like, you know, I'm getting paid, so, you know, this is now my job. So you can come, you can ask your terrible questions if you have them. LGBT people hopefully don't have those terrible questions, but I know some straight cis people have had some really awful questions, but, like, I'm getting paid to do it. So, you know, go ahead and ask. Ask questions that you wouldn't ask someone who you just met, who's doing all of this for free, right?
Well, we all appreciate what you're doing and what you do. Seriously.
Thank you, guys.
And
thank you,
gang, maybe that's a perfect way to end our chat. Now, I would have much rather that we had our chat in person. But I'm happy to see all your lovely faces here through my Zoom. And hopefully folks at home on Facebook, this would give you something to think about. and tune in to Fairness West Virginia. What day is that on again?
It'll be next Thursday. It will be from 7 to, it'll be actually kind of the exact same as this. I think it's either 6:30 to 8 or 7 to 8:30. We have a Facebook event, and we'll be sharing that next week. Kind of, we didn't want to take away from this one, so we were holding off.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Well, I thought it was, timing is everything. And when you had reached out to me, and I'm like, well, hey, I was going to reach out to you too.
We're on a brainwave.
We are on a brainwave. I love it. Well, because you're a rock star anyway.
Thank you. I hope they're all having a great day.
Yeah.
That's an inside joke, Facebook.
And it's a wonderful joke.
So.
I love it. Anyway, so thank you all so much for being here, and especially just sharing so much of your lives, not only with me here, but with everyone that's watching us. It's not easy to put everything out on the front porch, Akasha, look at you raising your eyebrows. She's
I'm tired of y'all. Y'all don't know too much about me. Too much. I'm going to run for office. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. I know someone that can do some campaign photos for you.
I know somebody that can too.
Well,
I'll get a tattoo for it.
there you go.
There you go. There you go.
So
I don't know what I'm going to run for, but I will run for something. We're going to talk. That's another conversation me and Gosses is going to have. And
Right.
we'll talk.
We'll talk. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And for you folks at home, definitely check out Fairness West Virginia's Facebook page. I automatically assume if people follow Rainbow Pride, they follow Fairness West Virginia. But if you don't, go over and hit like so that way you're staying up to date on everything that Fairness, Fairness puts out an amazing amount of messaging. Because with Rainbow Pride of West Virginia, we're a social advocacy group. And there are a lot of things that Fairness West Virginia does to benefit the LGBTQ community in West Virginia. And we're always, we I don't know how you guys at Fairness see it, but but we always feel like we have this symbiotic type relationship with Fairness that, so
I would say that's fair. I think in general, I don't want to sing the praises of my organization too much. I mean, I do agree that we do great work. I do agree that we do necessary work. I just also think we can always do better. So
we all can.
that's constantly what we're, at least what I'm trying to do is constantly improve, constantly uplift voices that are not getting heard, and constantly just, trying to do better every day.
Yep. Well, you know what? I see it. And we're trying to do the same thing, and hopefully we're inspiring other folks to try to improve too. So, guys, it's going to turn into a love fest here in a second, so we should probably just sign off before everyone gets tired of.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll hit leave right now, sir.
All right. All right. Well, I will chat with you three later. Thanks for being here, Akasha, Natasha, and Avery. Love you all. I'll chat with you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you.